It all started, as these things often do, with a mundane assignment. My name is Leo, and I'm a photo archivist for a provincial museum. My world is one of dust and brittle paper, of preserving moments long dead. In the autumn of last year, a box of donations from a deceased local historian landed on my desk. It was filled with the usual detritus: land deeds, personal letters, and a small folio of glass plate negatives from the early 20th century. Most were unremarkable, but one labeled in shaky script "Gold Bridge Reopening, South Fork, 1941, held a strange allure. I carefully cleaned the plate and made a high-resolution digital scan. The image bloomed on my monitor, a stark, high-contrast glimpse into the past. It showed a crowd of several dozen people gathered on a newly rebuilt timber bridge. Men in heavy wool suits and fedoras, women in calf-length dresses and cloche hats. They were celebrating, their faces turned towards the camera, smiling with that particular grim optimism of the wartime era. It was a perfect, frozen moment until I saw him. On the far left edge of the crowd, leaning against a timber support beam, was a man who did not belong. While everyone else was swathed in layers of wool and formal wear, he wore a dark, form-fitting sweater, the kind of synthetic fleece you'd buy today. His hair was cut in a modern, textured style, and most glaringly across his chest was the unmistakable, faded blur of a printed graphic t-shirt. He was looking slightly away from the camera, and on his face were a pair of sleek, wraparound sunglasses. My first thought was a prank, a clever Photoshop. But I was working from the original, unscanned glass negative. This was no forgery. A chill, thin and sharp as a needle, pricked the back of my neck. I told myself there had to be a rational explanation, an eccentric, a Hollywood extra, as some have suggested, lost on his way to a film set. I clung to that notion even as the dissonance of his image gnawed at me. That night, in my quiet apartment, the silence felt heavier than usual. I pulled the image up again, zooming in on the man's face. The resolution was poor, his features grainy and indistinct. But I could make out the line of his jaw, the set of his mouth. He wasn't smiling like the others. His expression was one of, what? Confusion? Dread? He looked like a man who had just walked into the wrong room and realized the door had vanished behind him. I started digging. The original negative was, as the premise stated, long lost after I'd found it. But my scan was perfect. I ran it through every analysis program I had, no digital manipulation. I've read every newspaper account of the bridge reopening. Clear skies, a turnout of 63 local residents. No reports of a strangely dressed stranger. Rational explanations began to crumble. An eccentric would have been noted, gossiped about. Extra would have been miles from any studio. The more I tried to prove he belonged, the more he stood out. A stark, anachronistic splinter in the skin of reality. A week later, the dreams started. Not dreams of the man, but dreams from him. I'd be standing on that bridge, the smell of fresh-cut pine and river mist thick in the air. The crowd would be a murmur of forgotten accents, the women's dresses brushing against my legs. And I would feel a profound, gut-wrenching disorientation. I'd look down at my own hands, expecting to see wool gloves and see the cuffs of a modern jacket instead. I'd feel a weight in my pocket that wasn't there, the hard, flat rectangle of a smartphone. A wave of panic would crest over me, a feeling of being irrevocably, terrifyingly lost. I'd wake up gasping, the taste of cold, 1941 air still in my mouth. The line between my research and my reality began to blur. I'd be walking through a supermarket, and for a split second, the fluorescence would seem to flicker. The people around me would be dressed in sepia-toned clothing, their faces blurring into those of the crowd on the bridge. The sound of a distant train horn would morph into the celebratory blast of a steam whistle. I was becoming an echo in my own life, haunted by a ghost who hadn't even died. The final descent came last Tuesday. It was in the museum's basement archive, the air stale and frigid. I had the photograph open on my laptop, my cursor hovering over the man's shaded eyes. I was trying to use a new software to enhance his face, to find some clue. Anything. The program churned, the pixelated blur slowly resolving. The enhanced image was no clearer. In fact, it was worse. The grain had coalesced into a face that was now unmistakable. It wasn't a stranger anymore. It was me. The line of the jaw. The set of the mouth, twisted in that same familiar confusion. The hair, my hair, it was me, staring out of a 1941 photograph, dressed in the very clothes I had worn to work that day. A deafening roar filled my ears, the sound of time itself tearing. The single, bare light bulb overhead flickered, and for one heart-stopping second, the dusty shelves around me vanished. I felt rough-hewn timber under my palms. I smelled the river. I heard the laughter and chatter of a crowd that had been dust for decades. A woman in a blue dress bumped my elbow, her face turning towards me, her smile faltering as she saw the terror in my eyes. Then it was over. I was on my knees in the cold, silent basement, the computer screen casting a sickly blue glow on the shelves of forgotten things. I've quit my job, stay in my apartment, the curtains drawn. I am terrified of mirrors, of reflective surfaces, because I know, with a certainty that freezes my blood, what happened to the man in the photograph. He wasn't a time traveler who stepped into the past. It was a man who got unstuck, and now the vacancy he left behind has my name on it. Every time a shadow moves in the corner of my eye, every time the world seems to stutter for a fraction of a second, I feel it, the pull. The bridge is waiting. And the crowd has a space reserved for one more.